All right, everybody, welcome back to the Veterans Club podcast. This is Jeffrey Rosales, your host, alongside my co-host, fellow Devil Dog here, Mr. Joe Palacios, the COO for Maxwell Soaps. Today, we have a very, very important topic to discuss with you all today. It's about getting justice for our nation's warriors. What do I mean by justice? I mean tackling those problems that we hear about all the time: veteran suicide, veteran homelessness. There's a lot of issues that are happening within our community, and we as veterans are putting our brain power and our ingenuity together to come up with creative economic solutions to start combating these problems. And our guest today is working on that. He served in the United States Marine Corps as a company commander. He is a Naval Academy grad. He spent a lot of time on Wall Street in the legal and finance sectors. And now he is going from Wall Street to Veteran Street because he's here to talk about the Camp Lejeune injustices that happen and his platform that he is bringing to our community to help solve these problems. Ron Lasorsa, welcome to the Veterans Club.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate in this. I really appreciate it, gentlemen.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir. And like I was saying before, I love the background. It reminds me of Ton Tavern. We got to connect it with Pat because that's definitely a brick that I want to purchase here. But Ron, let's dive into it for the audience here today. Tell us a little about where you grew up. What was it like before the Marine Corps?
So I grew up on Long Island in New York. You may still hear a hint of accent. It's tough to shake. But grew up very lower middle class in a tough neighborhood. Got my ass kicked every day. I'm not a big fella, and definitely took ass whoopings along the way. And so my mother had the foresight to put me into martial arts. Started karate at the age of 7, and then coincidentally, the police athletic league, opened a location right at the end of my block, and they started a wrestling program. And so I took to that like a duck to water. And that's actually what got me into the Naval Academy, was on a wrestling scholarship. And so, I had a very successful wrestling career, went to the Naval Academy, well, actually NAPS, more successful wrestling career than academic career. And so for those familiar with the commissioning process, they have a 13th grade called Naval Academy Prep School. All the service academies do. And that's really where they take prior service Navy and Marines, as well as potential, varsity athletes, and give them some academic support. And it was there, while I was working on my academics and wrestling, that I was introduced to a Marine, because my roommate was a corporal from 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, that had just been blown up in Lebanon. And he was smaller than me, but he was a badass. And so you had a lot of prior service Marines that were just coming back from Beirut at NAPS at the time. And that really inspired me to pursue the Marine Corps.
So similarly, like yourself, I came from a blue collar neighborhood, rough neighborhood. Been in a lot of fights myself, and the Marine Corps was just one of the only options for me after high school. It's just something that I really enjoyed. So you got into the Naval Academy, and you served in the Marine Corps around the 90s, correct?
Yeah, I was a 1989 graduate. I was commissioned a second lieutenant and stationed to 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, 2nd Marine Division at Camp Lejeune. And so as soon as I got out of infantry officers course, I was stationed in July, and then the Gulf War kicked off in August. And so it was all about ramping up for Desert Shield and Desert Storm. I was a weapons platoon commander during Desert Shield and Desert Storm. We actually spent 7 months over there in the first pump, came back for 3 months, and then I went back on a second deployment on the Saipan. In the second deployment, I was a 81 millimeter mortar platoon commander, and then when we got back from the pump, I was assigned to School of Infantry at Camp Geiger on Camp Lejeune. And so it was there that I was a company commander as a first lieutenant, responsible for H&S Company, all the barracks, I had about 500 Marines under my command, all of the, headquarters and service element, which was, interesting being a grunt and dealing with, all the different elements of the Marine Corps. And while I was responsible for all the barracks, I noticed that there was a significant issue with the water. And when you turn on the taps, and people were drinking tap water back then, and it was almost like syrup, right? And I thought it was actually lead in the water. And so I wrote an Inspector General report, or I wrote a report to the base commanding general's Inspector General, and actually got pulled up for an ass chewing from Colonel Kopka. I love that guy. And he's like, do you know how much trouble you caused me with this report? And it was through that report, and I'll make a distinction. I didn't discover the water contamination, right? That was another Marine later on finding paperwork and really some high level PI shit. But that wasn't me. I was just reporting what I thought it was an issue up the chain of command. And I actually got hired to be Brigadier General Larry Livingston's aide-de-camp based on that report. So I had the privilege of being an aide-de-camp as a first lieutenant, and to a guy who was my regimental commander during the Gulf War. So there was an affinity. He was he's a former gunnery sergeant. They got a battlefield commission in Vietnam, 2-time Navy Cross winner, badass during the Gulf War, and I was fortunate enough to be selected to be his aide-de-camp.
I love that right there, Ron, what you just talked about, because to me, one of the big things the Marine Corps has always talked about is honor, courage, and commitment, right? You saw a problem, you wrote a report about it, and then somebody rewarded you for it, which is the way it should be, right? And I love that you like the Marine Corps leadership principles that are instilled in you from day one, you have been applying to them, as many Marines do, especially after they get out. So I love that part.
Well, the aide-de-camp role is unique in the sense that I opened a lot of doors, I poured a lot of coffee, I arranged luncheons, things outside of and it's a cushy position, right? But what it did give me was the opportunity to see how General Livingston managed a small town. Camp Lejeune is a small city, and he was responsible for every aspect of it. And so from a experience perspective, it was an invaluable opportunity. And also during that time, we know how the Marine Corps is, right? You time and grade. So I had already had the two best jobs a grunt can have in the Marine Corps as a first lieutenant. I was a company commander at the School of Infantry, which, first of all, I was a combat veteran, right? Twice deployed. That's something all Marines aspire to, right? You don't get in the game to sit on the sidelines, right? You want to, and so that's one of the things about the Marines. I was a company commander, right, which checks off command responsibility. And then I was an aide-de-camp as a first lieutenant, captain select. But again, I had 7 years ahead of me where I probably wasn't going to get another company, and I was already an aide-de-camp, right? So it was going to be a very unproductive 7 years. And General Livingston was kind enough to let me get my MBA while I was on active duty. One of the things that I love about the Marine Corps is the opportunity for education, right? We are a class of, warrior scholars, right? And so that's one of the things that impressed me most about the Marine Corps. It wasn't just about physical prowess, but they encouraged us to be intellectually dangerous as well. And so, again, I love that. And so General Livingston allowed me to get my MBA while I was on active duty. And Boston University had a program where they flew one professor down every weekend, and I got my MBA over 20 months from Boston University. And that gave me a unique perspective on the world of finance that I never had before, right? Growing up in New York, I knew a lot of rich kids whose fathers worked on Wall Street, but I had no idea what it looked like. And so General Livingston, I told him my situation, and he was a very loyal guy and knew I could be more effective outside of the Marine Corps helping other Marines. And so he let me interview on Wall Street during the last 4 months before I separated. As a Naval Academy graduate, you have a 5-year commitment. And so instead of going to, whatever the next school would have been, he allowed me to interview on Wall Street. And it was another Marine that got me my first job on Wall Street, Peter Smith, at JP Morgan, who happened to be the vice chairman, who took my call because I was a Marine. So again, Marines helping Marines, this is a working business model in my life. And so that's part of what I'm so excited to share with your audience today.
I love that. I mean, because what you just described, especially General Livingston, I for those who are non-veterans, think of it as a mayor, right? The mayor of your town. Ron Lasorsa was his aide, right? Everywhere the mayor had to make decisions as far as your town, Ron was the guy who made it happen, right? Especially with the execution and the operations. So, and the fact that he let you further your education says a lot, because you're absolutely right. Marines are warrior scholars. In fact, a lot of Marines that I know have gone on to do some great, phenomenal things. Like there's a Marine that I met a couple years ago. She got out after 5 years, and she became a doctor, like a medical doctor, Ron, because the Marine Corps instills discipline in us like no other service. No offense to the other service, but we just have that sense of discipline. So if you give us a mission or a task, we will accomplish it. Come hell or high water, it will happen, and we will get it done. So I love that the fact that you said that. Joe, you got anything?
No, I just say it's that same, it's that thing we discussed the ethos of that, growing up through the military by growing up in the civilian world. I think in the military there's no going back to your squad leader or your platoon commander or the general and saying, oh, it can't be done. That doesn't happen. It's, you don't come back and go, oh, we can't do that. I don't do that. It's not my job description. For us, it's like, what do we have to do to make it done? And I think that's obviously a really great trait for us to have. Sometimes it's a burden because we won't give up until we finish it. And in the real world, there are things that just can't be done, alone especially. So I also like the fact that we talk about it being a team effort and you having all of these other Marines that came in and go, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's work on it together and let's build it up. The teamwork part of being in the military also plays a lot in that. Ron, I'm just curious because there's been a shift probably since you and I first started, because I came in just after Desert Storm. So I got in 92 after Desert Storm, Desert Shield. And at that time, I have to agree, there was so many opportunities for schooling. For education, the programs were out there, but I think maybe I was in an environment where we really focused on the Marine grunting instead of that outside thing. But I actually knew that we had all of these great programs for education, and one of the biggest things I think that we do our young Marines a disservice in, and I really think it's kind of needs to be a shift. Go back to how the leadership that you had, which was, let's focus on having them more educated. Like, I honestly think that, because Jeffrey hit it too, we always joke about Marines like the crayon eaters and, the ASVAB waivers and all that. But I got to say, like, I have yet to meet a dumb Marine, if that makes any sense. All of them have some type of an intelligence level that's way above what you would think they'd have. A Lance Corporal machine gunner, but he's super smart in technology or something. I mean, it's just, there's always like these really weird things that you come across when you're in the grunts, especially, where there's just guys that are just like, dude, you should be like leading some scientific research center or something. It's like these really crazy things, but I've always loved that idea that we're such a melting pot. Anyway, that's all I had. But also, Ron, actually, no, Ron, what steps after your that once you became the aide de camp, what things did you start working towards to really look into the water systems and improvements? I know we're going to talk into that later, but as that part, like how much did General Livingston, as his aide de camp, really push to figure out what's going on and start helping?
Well, and this is part of the bigger problem that we'll talk about. The general was only a 1-star, number one, right? And, you know, that's pretty low on the food chain in terms of general officers. But then above that, you have the whole civilian element of the DOD, and then you have politicians above them. So unfortunately, nothing was done. And we'll talk about the Camp Lejeune Justice Act and the litigation going on, but that is a travesty of justice, because there's a high likelihood that the situation is still going on, right? Beyond just the artificial time limit that they put in place. And I finally found out why they put that time limit in place. So when we get to that, people could say, why did it cut off from 1958 to 1987? I finally found out the answer. So that's kind of a teaser for going forward. But nothing was done. Nothing was done about the water, right? And again, you talk about the change in culture. Now the barracks, right? Again, another travesty of justice, where they have all this black mold, and Marines are being forced to provide upkeep on their barracks. It's just, we have as a class, right, veterans in general, but Marines have always been on the end of the food chain in terms of economics, right? We are literally at the end of the line for no good reason. And we, as Marines, right, can rally, right? We can begin to take care of our own through this process. And really, collectively, as a tribe, we Marines could make this industry that I'm going to talk about, litigation finance, right, our own industry, capture an industry in order to change this for all veterans. So we have the opportunity to lead as a community.
I love that. So Ron, let's definitely jump into after you served in the Marine Corps. What was your transition like? Because it seemed like you had a job lined up, but I'm sure, just especially for my veterans here that are listening and Marines in general, did you go through some changes, missing the camaraderie and the culture of the Marine Corps when you got onto Wall Street?
So kind of stratification of areas of I've always been gravitated towards combat, right? In particular, individual combat, right? As a wrestler, martial artist, right? Marine Corps infantry. And then there is a higher level of aggression, and becoming a derivatives trader on Wall Street is a whole nother level of combat, in that you transition from physical combat into intellectual combat, right? And then you're playing for money, right? Usually large sums. And my transition, I got my ass kicked because, my first job was at JP Morgan. And that's when they were just starting banking, Glass-Steagall, all laws, separating commercial banking from investment banking. This is really when that law was repealed and Wall Street became the Wild West again, right? This is the whole .com era. And I was a fish out of water because JP Morgan recruits from the best. And but as I said, Peter Smith, the vice chairman of the bank, said, hire this Marine. So I had to find a place, to put me. I wanted to be an investment banker. right? Now, knew very little bit about Wall Street, only what I learned in my MBA program. And the investment bankers are like the officers of Wall Street, right? And everybody that I talked to said, no, you're a trader. You're a trader. And the traders are the grunts, right? And so I really gravitated more towards the aggressive combat of trading derivatives, right? And then, you put a predator amongst other predators, the apex predator will rise to the top. And I became very successful on Wall Street, primarily through derivatives trading, block trading, right? Managing risk, which again, it's just another form of strategy and tactics. And so that's why, and then there's a huge club of Marines on Wall Street, huge subculture. And some of my most memorable and fun Marine Corps birthdays were with Marines on Wall Street. And so huge camaraderie where Marines also rise to the top in, the realm of intellectual combat.
I love that, intellectual combat. That is a quote that we need to write down, Joe. So how much did you apply then from the Marine Corps to Wall Street, right? Because that's a whole different area. Like it's like ones and zeros, lots of numbers, right? Number crunching, trading. Then you got to look at all like the whole geopolitical, right? How the markets are moving, how the world is moving, how the economy is moving. You got to like take all of that, and then you got to make a decision to say, am I going to place a trade or not?
Well, again, a wrestler moving instinctually, right? Grunt, strategy, tactics, but again, reading reading what's going on, right? Trading is the same. I drew the connection because it's strategy and tactics and aggressive execution, right? And believe me, it's very much a zero-sum game when you're doing that. And it was a fist fight every day. And when you enjoy that activity, right? Because you get stronger. Even when you get your ass kicked, you get stronger. I loved that opportunity. Again, wrestler, Marine, trader, right? That's all kind of leading up. And I have found an asset class, a business model that's even more aggressive than all of those previous ones, right? Which is litigation finance.
So real quick, before we get into litigation finance, so after you went to Wall Street, you spent some time in the legal realm as well, right? Like after Wall Street?
Yeah, when you make a lot of money, I had family issues, and also both my sons were born with neurobehavioral effects that have since been linked to the water. We were stationed at Camp Lejeune for 4 years, and both my sons that were born while we were there and right after we got out had neurobehavioral effects. And so, with a lot of money comes, a lot of pressure. And with two mentally challenged sons, my family broke apart. And we went through a very adversarial divorce. And so money was the issue. So I quit Wall Street, became a paralegal, and actually to work on my own divorce, and then attended law school. And it was during my time at law school that I realized just how corrupt the legal profession was. But as a former trader, I saw the business opportunity, because there is no more profitable industry in the US than the legal profession, pound per pound, right? There are 1.34 million lawyers in the country. And while the vast majority of them are, middle class, above middle class, there is a very small subset that are hyper wealthy. And so as I said, they skew the whole number up. And those are the guys, those trial lawyers, right, that fight for the big bucks, that win these multi-million, $100 million, billion-dollar settlements. They are the apex predators of the legal profession. And that's who I've been dancing with for, well over a decade at this point.
Ron, just curious, after rubbing elbows, like you said that you felt that that there was a lot of corruption in that thing. How many of those, when you started to rub elbows in that industry, how many are actually really looking to better stuff? Like, would you say that is it an equal? It's just like anything else, right? Like, I mean, we know that there were Marines who didn't really kind of apply the honor, courage, commitment. There's always that 10%. Would you say it's a similar there? There's like a 10% in the legal, and that 10% kind of gives the whole area a bad name. And how many of the good guys did you kind of connect with, and how many of them are kind of on board with your Victory Litigation Fund? Because that would be really cool. But I also have one more question to backtrack. I'm just really curious. I've thought of it and I've never asked. So you're going to be the first Marine that I ask, as a Marine officer especially. How many of the exact TTPs, techniques, training and procedures that you learned via the military that you applied? You said something earlier when you were talking about being in the trading industry and in the investment, and it made me think of Boyd's theory, right? The OODA loop.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Things like that. So how many would you say, as a Marine officer, of the TTPs that we learned in the military that you have kind of utilized and kind of transferred? Like, do you use Boyd's theory? Do you take your SMEAC and put that down? Do you develop a warning order and kind of like bastardize it to be civilian like? Like, which ones do you use? I'd really like to hear like the kind of things that you actually use.
All of them, every one that you just mentioned, and perhaps it's because we're of a similar generation. But when I mentioned OODA loop, right, casually to people, they have no idea what I'm talking about. And so, orientation, observation, right?
Decide and then act, and then repeat,
Exactly. And so, absolutely. And it's by getting inside my adversary's OODA loop that I often succeed. And more importantly, when I get my ass kicked, it allows me to get back up and try it again with a different. So that forms the foundation of everything. And then certainly just being able to give, a SMEAC, and then also, get ready and organize fundamental principles. So it is through, and this is why I think the veteran community is going to thrive, right? Because we have the basic skills. Now we just need to reorient on another objective as a community. So we have the same language. And that's really why, to the extent I can, I want to hire veterans within this industry, right? Because we speak the same language. We have the same ethos. And more importantly, we have the opportunity to reinvest in our community, right? With the profits. So again, fantastic questions. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and Ron, I just want to touch base again because I like that. I've always really dug Boyd's theory, because when you really apply it, it is insane how everything slows down, and you like the whatever you're working on. Once you really get inside that OODA loop, all the processes seem to come clear. Everything slows down. Your actions are more fluid. It's really kind of cool. Like, when you really kind of develop that skill. Anyway, thank you again for that. I appreciate it, Ron. And
Joe, no, that's a great point. And for our listeners here, or veterans in general, a lot of the things that you apply in the service, you can apply to the business world and for your career. One thing is your mindset. The military instills discipline in you, but you also learn strategy, tactics, operations, how to handle personnel, equipment, and resources to achieve an objective, right? So that commander, that CEO, that VP, that division leader, if they give you an objective, you find a way to accomplish it, right? So all these skills, and I'm seeing the comments here, it all transfers. Absolutely right. So do not forget that, right? All right. So let's transition a little bit, Ron, because now I want to get to the meat of this. So It seems like the seeds were being planted earlier where you wrote an IG report because of the whole thing going on with Camp Lejeune. It's impacted your family. Tell us more about this whole Camp Lejeune Justice Water Act and everything that's going on with it, because now I want to highlight the problem before we get to the solution.
Sure. So this is all part of the PACT Act, Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxics, which was passed in 2022. It was the largest expansion of veteran healthcare benefits in American history. And what it really laid down was legal precedent for presumptive illnesses, right? In the past, veterans had to prove that their illnesses were service-related. Now, the PACT Act passed a whole list of presumptive illnesses where the veteran no longer had to prove it. And currently, as of this date, about 1.4 million veterans have been screened and about 1.1 million veterans have been approved. So about a 75% conversion rate on screened versus approved. And one can argue that perhaps the VA is being too stringent, but those are the numbers as it stands. So you have 1.1 million veterans who have presumptive diseases associated with their health care, right? A huge community of veterans who are now going to get the relief that they're due because they put their lives on the line, right? That number is much, I'm sure, much larger, but those are what the numbers are right now. Now, inserted in that 2022 law, PACT Act, was a smaller special interest bill. And there was one lawyer, Ed Bell, who lobbied, right, self-reported $7 million in lobbying fees to get the Camp Lejeune for Justice Act paid. And what that law did was give a very small subset of people stationed at Camp Lejeune between 1958 and 1987, the opportunity to sue the federal government for damages associated with their presumptive illnesses, right? Huge problem in that. Number one, as I said, the chemicals associated with the contamination, water contamination, are forever chemicals. They don't go away, right? One could argue that the condition still exists today, and the government had been covering it up, right? Had been covering it up because they didn't want to admit liability because of the economic impact, right? So this has been a huge cover-up. But because Ed Bell lobbied the right people in Congress, he got that bill inserted. And what that did was it gave a small subset of people the opportunity to sue the federal government for additional damages. And that there are a number of issues associated with that. And so what I did was I sued Ed Bell in the Eastern District of North Carolina for two charges. People can Google it, Lasorsa v. Bell. You pull it up, you can see all the filings, right, of what I've done. But I sued him for, number one, negligence, right, because there's a significant amount of fake claims inserted. There are about 300,000 claims filed as of this date. And roughly, I'm going to say 25% of them are fake. So we're talking about 75,000 fake claims. But more importantly, it's a violation of those other veterans, their due process rights. If a small subset of Camp Lejeune veterans are eligible for compensation, then all those other veterans who have presumptive diseases through their military service should get that. And so that's a huge issue that I sued right now. And for those who are interested in litigation finance, there are rules, right, in court. We can talk about a two-tiered system of justice, right, where there's one rule for lawyers and politicians and another for common people, but there are rules. And so I filed my initial lawsuit on January 18th. The guy had 20 days to respond. He didn't respond in time. He responded 4 days late, which by the rules gives me a default judgment, right? And he tried to cover it up that he wasn't properly served. But he called me 18 minutes after he was served, and I have the phone records. So I have irrefutable evidence, right, that this guy was 4 days late. So by the rules, I've won. Now, subsequent to that, the judges had put out a request for settlement masters, right? People to help achieve a more reasonable global settlement. And they chose 3 people. One's a magistrate judge and two are judges. One is actually a former Marine Corps JAG who had gone on to a successful career. But none of those people have the ability to sort out there are 3 criminal charges, right? Conspiracy, mail and wire fraud, and identity theft. Nobody is in the unique position to sort that self out as I am. And so I put forth a proposed final judgment order naming me settlement master to conduct that settlement master audit. And so that's there. That seed's been planted. They can't run from me, right? They can't duck this issue because I've submitted, again, through my firsthand personal knowledge, sufficient probable cause to give the court the duty to investigate, right? So I got him in a corner, right? I got him in an armbar, and I'm just waiting for this thing to break. But there are other opportunities beyond that. But that's where the Camp Lejeune is. We have the broader issue, and that broader issue needs to be solved politically, right? And so there's an opportunity here for me to lobby Congress to get some changes done to the PACT Act law, right? So this is all part of the broader business model, but we have them. We have them. And it's through this settlement master audit, right? That's the first source of revenue that could benefit the veteran community.
So just breaking it down real quick, Barney style, right, from a Marine here, is you are for the Camp Lejeune Act or the Justice Act or whatever here, you are now suing, but then what you're doing is you're taking the proceeds and you want to actually those proceeds to go to the family instead of the lawyers. Do I have that correct?
Well, part of it is the lawyers are trying to take upwards of 50% of the legal fees, right? Under my model, I cap it at 20%, right? So the plaintiff, right, the injured party gets more of the money from their award, right? And then what I do is from that fee, right? But those are on cases. The settlement master audit charges the law firm a fixed flat fee to audit their docket to get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse.
So you're essentially like the middleman. You're like cutting down his cut, right? And then you're making sure that the actual end user gets more of the actual cause, right? Whatever the settlement is.
Well,
is that correct?
First, what I'm doing is I'm curing the docket of waste, fraud, and abuse to the benefit of the American taxpayer. Because right now, all of those fake cases would have paid lawyers and hedge funds, right, from the American taxpayer. So I'm cutting down on waste, fraud, and abuse for them, number one. Number two, I'm lowering the fees for the qualified claimants, the people who actually have a claim, from upwards of 50% down to 20%, right? So it's better for the taxpayer. It's better for the injured party. It's better for the lawyers, right? For the ethical lawyers. We talked about one of the questions that you asked were about ethical lawyers. And as I was saying, there are different types of lawyers, and the vast majority of them, I'm sure, are ethical. But at that very top, that pinnacle, it is a gray water industry at best.
I wanted to touch on that, Ron, because the way I picked up is some lawyer was able to lobby to add something into the PACT Act so that they could sue the government. But then that same guy was able to get people that aren't even qualified, like, in other words, like you said, fraudulent, probably claimants, to submit, but they're going to get 50% of all those things. was the original lobby? Is that's also what you're fighting, right? Because it sounds like the guy kind of lobbied for something. Oh yeah, this is going to be great for veterans, and we should put this in there. It's a good thing, and he lobbied it perfectly. But really, the motive was to take 50% from veterans that are probably, or from people that one might not qualify, and also from the ones that do qualify, still take 50%.
Yes, it is a diabolical plan, and when we talk about kind of the apex predators at the top, it's a very self-serving industry. But here's the benefit, gentlemen. I have been swimming amongst the sharks for longer than I was a Marine, longer than I was a trader, and I know their tactics, right? And what a good warrior does is learn the enemy's tactics and then applies it for a different purpose. And so my plan is to do the very same thing, where we lobby to have the law changed in such a way that it benefits the veteran community. And the way that I do this is by fighting the guy. So Ed Bell was the lawyer that lobbied to change the law, and now he's lead counsel of the plaintiff steering committee, which is a cartel, blah, blah, blah. We can get into this. So I took on the main guy and I sued him for negligence and a violation of everybody's due process rights. And then he files 4 days late, proving the negligence. I file for default judgment. I file my proposed final judgment order. I'm due a hearing, and I have him on the facts, right? And so what we, as a part of me appearing on these podcasts, is to tell a very complicated story, but also get to the solution, because we can use this as an opportunity, right, to avail ourselves of a significant amount of money, right, for ourselves and for our community. So, with every tragedy comes an opportunity, and it's through, our intestinal fortitude, right, to take a bad situation and turn it into good. And that's what we have the opportunity to do right now, gentlemen, as a community, right? And I don't need a lot of people, right? Again, as a Marine, we'll do more with less, right? I need true believers. I need people that need to believe it, that believe in the mission, right? And are more altruistic. There's a shitload of money involved, but that's not the primary mission. Primary mission is to change, the wrong that's being perpetrated, and then take the proceeds and put it back into the community.
So essentially, you want to just reverse engineer what they have been doing the entire time, and now you want to actually help our community, right? With all the knowledge you've learned.
Better yet, set the ethical high watermark. As Marines, because I know all the flaws in their current system, as you said, I've reverse engineered it. And again, what do Marines do? We outcompete, right? These are Marine Corps standards that I intend to set in the industry, and then give people a choice. Do you want this or do you want that, right? And here's the relative benefit between the two. And here's the standard. Anybody that wants to meet our standard, come on in, right? Let's compete head to head. But what we bring to the table is a community. So think of USAA Investment Bank or USAA Bank, right? I was a client of theirs for 35 years before their service got really shitty. But we can talk about USAA, kind of the corruption that comes along with financial success. But what they did prove is the power of the veteran community, right? And that's what we have the opportunity to do within the legal profession, right? Create a community, right? Self-contained, where we impose the ethical high watermark for legal delivery of legal services, right? So attracting the very best lawyers, right, into our community, right, so that they give our veteran participants the very best legal services.
what I love about this, Ron, is that if you go back and you listen to some of our shows when we talk about business, I have this belief, and I say it a lot. What you're doing is similar to what I always say. Somewhere along the line, business industries in all different areas lost sight of why business was originally created. Business was when business first started, it was because some guy was like, man, I'm really good at this. I can do this all day, really good. My neighbors are shitty at it. They're not very good. But I want to help my neighbors. So I am going to provide this product, this service, this technology to help solve problems for my neighbors, for my community, for my country, or whatever the idea behind it was, right? But it was always in the end to solve problems. And then the money part came as just a compensation for their time and effort. Now it's gotten to the point. I mean, I saw this thing the other day that a statistic where people who work, the amount of work they have to put in has increased by like 50%. Their pay has increased by like 7%. But CEOs, executives, their increase has been 1,500% in that same time span. So we're looking at this huge disparity in how money is used in business these days. And I love that you're doing that, setting a higher watermark. And I think all business owners, if you're listening, if you're on our show, if you follow the show, I think the next step in business evolution is this younger generation doesn't play that, oh, I don't mind paying a high price. They don't. But they're going to look at, what are you doing with this higher priced product? Like, what is that revenue going toward? Are you paying your employees well? Are you taking care of the environment? What are you doing within the community? There are so many other aspects people are looking at now when they spend their money. Like, I think people will be willing to spend higher prices if the outcome of that money that goes to that company is doing a high watermark type of system. If it's just a profit first, and the disparity between the grunt and the leader is 1,000% difference, people are going to stop buying. And I think there's a huge change in that. So hats off to you on taking on the legal industry and trying to set a higher mark. It's what we do. It's what I think veteran leadership is about, is it's setting those higher standards. So thank you.
Well, you just touched on an important point that I don't often mention, but it comes down to officers in the field getting chow. And the officers always ate last by rank. But the officer, it's whatever was left, right? And in some instances, you didn't have anything. And in other instances, you ate best. And that's really the the underlying economic model of this, right? I'm sharing more than I keep, right? By putting it into the community. And that every business owner could adopt this ethos, right? Every one of these top plaintiffs, trial attorneys could do this, but they don't. And so what I intend to do is assume leadership and set the standard. I just happen to have the most profitable business model in the world in which to do it. And so I can have a disproportionate impact, but certainly setting the example is something I intend to do. And it's through this type of forum where we can talk about these ideas and bring to fore kind of the cultural relevance to veterans, certainly, but Marines in particular, right? Where we can continue to live the Marine Corps ideal, but in a civilian business environment, right? Where we're taking care of our community. And, they always say, what's the best way to rehabilitate a veteran? Give them another mission, right? Right? For better or worse, we've been conditioned into a particular personality type, and we respond best when somebody empowers us with a mission, right? So that we can perform. So let's continue that. We all feel best, right? when we're achieving our highest ideal. And nobody wants to go, sell their time for money, although many of us have to, right? It's achieving that satisfaction in life, right? We didn't join the military for the money. We joined the military for the mission, for the esprit de corps, right? And this gives us an opportunity, not a large group, right, but the right type of people to continue that type of mission in a social impact kind of way.
This is why I'm so bullish, and ladies and gentlemen, this is why I'm so bullish on our community, right? One reason why I founded the Veterans Club, to give a voice to you all, because I am bullish that we are going to solve veteran homelessness. There's no way that we cannot solve veteran homelessness. And I'm a big believer in folks like yourself, like Joe and Ron, that we're going to achieve this together. And we're going to cut down that freaking veteran suicide rate. There's no way that there's 150,000 veterans since 9/11 have taken their lives. That's more than Vietnam, Gulf War, Iraq, and Afghanistan veterans put together, right? And I'm so bullish on our community to be able to solve our own problems. Ron, you and I talked a little before this show started, and you were mentioning some of the cultural aspect as far as a cultural business model, how you relate it to the way our Native brothers and sisters live. Can you touch upon that a little bit?
Sure. So as I mentioned, I see, huge commonality between the veteran community and the American Indian community, in the sense that they were both, they're both warrior cultures, proud people, but prone to addiction, poverty, suicide, right? And it wasn't until certain tribes within the Native American community adopted a tribal business model, right? Gaming, where it provided them the economic engine for them to become self-sustainable and really achieve a level of success, right? I spent, the last decade in Florida, where the Seminole Indian tribe runs the Hard Rock, casinos and hotels. And, the Seminole Indians are among the richest Native American Indian tribes in the country for that reason, and gaming throughout the country for tribal purposes. We veterans have an opportunity to adopt litigation finance, right, as a tribal business model to pull ourselves out of kind of the social, conundrum that we find ourselves in. As you said, the veteran suicide, the toxic exposure, food insecurity, right? Homelessness. These are issues. And look, I commend all of the veteran 501c3s that are out there trying to make an impact. That's magnificent, right? Magnificent effort. But in that, you're asking people to give money altruistically, right? And that has certain limitations. In my model, right, we're not asking, we're taking, right? It is a more assertive business model, and the soft target that we're going to use as our piggy bank is this litigation finance asset class, and it's a $25 billion a year industry, right? And so that provides a significant amount of revenue that we can redirect into our community through the business structure that I've put together, right? And so I don't know how much further you want me to go down the road, but let's
talk about real quick the solution part, because litigation finance, a lot of people don't know what it really means. Can you just break it down? Because you mentioned asset class, right? When you're a Wall Street guy, so now I'm trying to put my Wall Street hat on, and I'm like, what's litigation finance? What's the asset class? Can you break it down just for the general audience here?
Yeah, Ron, you're briefing Lance Corporals.
Okay, all right. Let me break it down. So everybody knows what lawyers do, right? Lawyers, they represent people. And there are two types of lawyers. There are lawyers that get paid by the hour. Those are retainer type lawyers, and they're trading time for money. That's roughly 80% of the lawyers. And then you have contingency fee lawyers. And those are most often trial lawyers, right? Personal injury lawyers, right? Vast majority of them. And they get paid a percentage of what they're able to get, most often in auto accidents, right? But they're suing somebody that has the ability to pay. And then they can take a certain amount of money. The very pinnacle of those trial lawyers are specialized in mass tort and class action. So personal injury lawyers handle individual cases. Mass tort and class action, as the name would suggest, they handle, thousands, tens of thousands, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of clients at the same time for the same fee, right? So they are the apex predators of trial lawyers. And there are only about 100 of them in the country, right? And so really talking a very rarefied air. The size of the mass tort and class action industry is only about 3,000 professionals, but it generates billions of dollars in revenue. And there are larger law firms that do other areas of practice, right? But pound for pound, mass tort plaintiffs lawyers are, back in the tobacco settlement, right? They had the Texas Five. There were 5 Texas lawyers that each made $1 billion in the tobacco settlement. Lawyers. In the case of 3M, right? People are familiar with 3M. Brian Alstock, who I happen to know and I've worked with, he was lead counsel. He had roughly reported 18%, but let's round it up to 20%, right? They took 50% of the fees. It's a $6 billion award. $3 billion went to the lawyers. Brian Alstock had 20%. He made roughly $600 million in 3M, right? And so that's the type of profitability associated with the business model. And I've worked with probably 10% of that 100% of those 100 lawyers, right? And are intimately familiar with their business models. And so that's both the good and the bad, right? And we can talk about the things that I've accomplished in litigation finance, but I am a subject matter expert in very rarefied air.
I know. I love the fact that you broke it down here, because, and this is what I love about Marines in general, because we're so efficient. We know how to streamline processes. But now, because of your Marine Corps background and the things you went through with your family, you've taken a broken process that others didn't look as broken because they benefit from it. And now you're taking it and you're streamlining it, and you're actually going to help and put that to veteran causes, right? To help veterans, right? So let's talk about your solution here before we get ready to wrap up. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, there is a QR code here that you can scan to learn more about it, or you can go to the website directly down below in the banner. Let's talk about your solution here.
Right. So what I've accomplished in litigation finance, I started a law firm as a non-attorney. There's a loophole there where non-attorneys can own law firms. We originated over 15,000 claims in less than a year, and I sold that law firm for $40 million. Okay, so $40 million exit. Now, part of the issue that I found out was that roughly 20% of those claims that we originated were fake. And so what it did was it opened my eyes that there is an open secret at that mass tort and class action level where there's an organized crime element, and that's where it's gray water. And it's really through that deficiency, right, that I've been able to, fix the model, right? So it's only through having been in a couple of battles. Then I went on to originate about $500 million in legal fees with some other bad actors. And so this is where I say not every lawyer is unethical, just every lawyer that I've met. and worked with in this. So I'm not disparaging all lawyers. It's just that I've danced with some of the most profitable, ruthless, and unethical lawyers in the space. But it's only through interaction with them that I've been able to acquire the skills that can cure this and really allow the veteran community to thrive.
Ron, would you say though that unethical part is a lawyer problem, or is it a system problem?
It's a system problem because it's so profitable.
Some guys are probably not considering that, oh man, this is unethical. This is just the way it's done.
Exactly.
And because that's the way it's done, that's just how they do it. So,
well, very similar to Wall Street, right? Wall Street is extremely profitable, and certain people break the rules all the time because it's just a profit loss decision. So again, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? But once you know the rules of the game, you can play the game right and profit from it, right? So everything that I've put together is completely legal, completely ethical, and it sets the high watermark. And because I know where the deficiencies are in the current model, I have the answers to the test. Just do it better, right? And so everything that I'm proposing, we're just going to do better.
So let's talk about your websites, No Better Advocate and Victory DeFi.
Yeah. So what we'll do is I'll put a redirect on Victory DeFi to go to the offering page. So let's talk about the solution for a second. Okay. My lawsuit to be settlement master cures a lot of issues, right? One of the things that I didn't mention is that in the pursuit of justice, I'm also an SEC whistleblower. I filed an SEC whistleblower report in October of 2022 outlining all of the bad actors. Again, rules of the court, if the SEC doesn't take up the action in 6 months, I can sue on behalf of myself and share with the government. So we have the settlement master audit for Camp Lejeune. We have the Keaton claim. And then there are 5 other commercial opportunities, 3M, Johnson & Johnson, Talc, and 4 other opportunities where you can do this audit. So there is a ready book of business to go after just by setting the ethical high watermark with each of those courts, okay? Now, the trick is how do we get those profits to the community? And as I'd mentioned, litigation finance had previously been cut off from regular investors. It was hedge funds, VCs, high net worth people. There's a lot of concern that sovereign wealth funds are gaining access to this, where the money goes actually to, American geopolitical adversaries. So the need for transparency in litigation finance is kind of percolating through Congress, right? My model cures that. And we do that through registered securities offerings, right? These are SEC securities offerings that have to adhere to a whole bunch of criteria. The first one is a $5 million Reg CF or crowdfunding opportunity, right? I can raise up to $5 million from anybody over the age of 18. And Jeffrey, this is where I was talking about a strategic joint venture with yourself, where I can take debit cards and credit cards, and I've lowered the minimum buy-in to $100, right? There is no maximum, right? But it's $100. And the return on investment through a revenue share security is 10x. So for every dollar you put in, I will pay 10x out to participants, okay? And where does that 10x come from? It comes from the revenue associated with these audits, right? Because each audit is a cash flow positive business transaction, right? It costs me less to produce the service than it does, than the fee that I'm charging the law firm, right? So each audit conducted is a profitable transaction of which I'm sharing the revenue, and I continue to share the revenue until you get $10 for every dollar put in. And this is all spelled out in the Reg CF offering. I know people are skeptical, and in another podcast I did, people were concerned that it's a Ponzi scheme. But by doing the Reg CF and going through an accredited investment, a crowdfunding portal, right, it sets the ethical high watermark for that, right? Now, subsequent to the $5 million Reg CF, I can issue a $75 million Reg A. If it's a $75 million Reg A and it's a 10x return, that's $750 million back into our community, right? Now I'm going to add another layer of complexity here. I'm going to have to do a much better job of explaining this to the community over a period of time. But the Victory Litigation Fund is what's referred to as a donor-advised fund, right? That is a particular type of structure where traditionally high net worth people, family offices who wanted to give back for tax advantages, right? They could donate marketable securities, real estate, stocks, bonds, trusts, whatever, and designate a nonprofit, right, to be the beneficiary of that. And then they get the tax deduction. That's a simplification of a donor advised fund. In this instance, if you buy the security token, right, you buy the token at $1, I'll give people three options. First option, keep the revenue share for yourself, right? That goes into our community. People could use that instead of a 401k, right? 401ks don't have a very high return. They could put a certain amount of money towards it. The second option is that when a distribution occurs, they can designate a 501c3 to send the money to, right? And then they get the cash, because they're assigning the cash, right? And IRS says if you donate cash, you get a 1-for-1 tax deduction. There's your tax deductible component. And it gives the person the opportunity to toggle back and forth. A third option that I'm going to offer is to donate to a political candidate, right? The idea is to get veterans into Congress so that we can help change the laws or support those current politicians that support a law. So there's a lobbying approach. So I know it's complicated, right? But it is the highest efficiency model out there.
No, I love it, man. And I'm just gonna level with everybody. There's 45,000 nonprofits. I think maybe like 5% of them actually do the work, right? And some others are just existing. The way I think of this is veteran homelessness. Let's just look at veteran homelessness. 100,000 veterans on the streets, right? And people normally donate to a nonprofit because that nonprofit is going to solve their problem. Chances are they're probably not. What Ron is doing is he's saying, I have a way that we can actually solve veteran homelessness, and you can get a return on that, right? By putting your money where your mouth is in a transparent way. And that's kind of the way I look at it. If I want to donate to Ron's fund, I know where that money is going because he's going to go and solve the Camp Lejeune Water Act. Just an example, right? So we can take care of those military and veteran families. But I'm also going to get a return on it, right? As the investor. I think that's a unique business model. It's something I have never heard of, but I like it because it's very innovative.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's taken me quite a bit of time to come up with it. But all of the concepts that I'm employing are existing in different use cases, right? So nothing I'm suggesting is really new and innovative. I've just been able to string together, a certain, sequence of pearls, if you will, to create a much higher value proposition. And the fact of the matter is that I don't need a large group of people that to either understand it or to be aligned with the mission to be successful, right? It's kind of that Marine Corps ethos, right? The few, the proud. And so by working with veterans groups, podcasters such as yourself being able to educate people and take feedback, right? You know, we're not asking, we're telling. And that's the beautiful thing about litigation finance. We're suing. I'm suing. I'm already in the pipe with these lawsuits to bring forth an equitable solution, right? I'm absolutely certain that I'm acting in the best interest of the plaintiff. I'm acting in the best interest of the taxpayer. I challenge a court to deny that, right? Because then there's the right to appeal. Everything that I'm putting forward is absolutely true, absolutely ethical, and absolutely an opportunity for the veteran community to benefit. I have zero doubt in my heart, and that's what makes me so dangerous. I truly believe, and I need I need to find my tribe that believe along with me, right? It's just a fight. We're accustomed to fighting, right? We bang it out in the courts, we bang it out in the business arena, and we bang it out in Congress, right? By lobbying, we make our voices heard. That's how the PACT Act got approved, right? I commend Burn Pit 360 and the other organizations that did that. Look what they were able to accomplish with 100 people on the steps of Congress, right? Magnificent. Now let's expand upon that, right? Right? Because now we have the ability to pay lobbyists. We have the ability to change the PACT Act law in such a way that benefits our community, right? The veteran community, instead of the legal community. We shift the balance of power back in our direction.
100%. What I love about this, Ron, is another thing. If you go back and listen to some of our shows, one of the things we discuss is that veterans can solve problems. Like, we just have to participate again. I think we're kind of like the unknown community. I mean, everybody knows us and everybody goes, "Oh, thank you for the service." But as far as us being a part of the community, I think somehow we've gotten to a point where we feel that we need to isolate ourselves, and we kind of don't participate as much as if we did. Like, I just like you're saying, I think so many different things can be accomplished if, as a community, we just participated, and participated in a way that we served, where it was nonpartisan, it was non-political. It was really about the people to our right and to our left. The only difference now, the people to our right and our left aren't necessarily the other Marines, soldiers, sailors, and airmen. They are our neighbors. They are the person that's down the street. That's the kind of thing that we're looking at. And when you're talking about this, like, veterans kind of taking charge and taking this fight out there, it really kind of gets me fired up, because it is something that I've been passionate about as well. Like, I think we're doing ourselves and our communities a disservice by not participating, by staying in the sidelines and just kind of like trying to do our own community stuff. Like, I think this is the kind of leadership that we need. So I really appreciate this. Thank you so much, Ron.
Well, if I may, and I appreciate the comments. Look, everybody, I think the public perception is, oh, poor veterans, right? Because there is such an emphasis on the societal ills, and that's horrible. But really, what I'm advocating is flipping the script and a path of empowerment, right? Where we stand up and avail ourselves of the skills that we developed during our military service and apply it in such a way, not destructively, right? Not destructively, but setting that ethical high watermark. Now it's no longer poor veterans. It's like, oh, veterans are now leading the charge to take care of their community, right? And we can set an example for other communities, right? One of the beautiful things about being a veteran is that every race, every creed, apolitical, right? It's not about the differences in society, right? It's that shared ethos, that commonality. And we can emphasize that as a community. And I can't imagine a veteran community that wouldn't expand the benefits to the broader community, because that's what we're all about. We didn't join the military to protect just our families. We joined the military to protect all of American society. And I think by taking leadership, we can do that again, building safer communities, building communities that mutually support each other, right? There are far more veteran allies, family members than there are veterans themselves, right? If you have a grandparent or a parent, or if you have a child or a sibling, right? That is a much broader patriot community that we can build upon. But somebody's got to go first, right? And as Marines, we're accustomed to going first. And so that's hopefully this podcast is kind of the clarion call to our community, and we can build upon it. So a couple of folks, I don't see the comments, but I've seen a couple of other Marine Corps influencers in this, and hopefully it reaches them, and that we collectively can come together. And I don't presume to have all the answers on how to help our community, but I do have the answers on how to monetize litigation finance to get the money into our community, right?
No, I love it, Ron. I love everything that you're talking about, because Joe and I talk about this a lot, right? Some of us go into business not just to make a profit. We do it to actually make an impact here. And we believe that as veterans, we can make an impact through our enterprises, our organizations, podcasts, our small businesses, because we care about the future of America and we care about our veterans. Like, we actually are not going to sit on the sidelines. We are going to speak up, and we're going to advocate in a way where we can get justice, but in an ethical way, in a healthy way. So that way we can keep the economic benefits in our communities. We see what's going on here, and we are stepping up. Folks like yourself, Ron. I think this conversation is going to be a multi-part series, because I got to get more smart on litigation finance, right? And everything you're doing, but I love it. If you guys are listening or following, please share this with your audience. Please let someone else know that there are veterans like Ron and Joe, like myself, that we care about you guys. And we actually want to solve problems, because veterans are trained to solve problems. That's what we do, right? This Marine has been battle tested, and I'm sure he's gotten a lot of backlash, probably from the status quo industry that he is challenging because of that. But he cares about all of you here. So check it out. Scan the Victory DeFi code, QR code that you see here. And for those of you that are going to join us for the after show, come ask your questions about litigation finance, so you can meet Ron, connect with Ron, and then collaborate with folks here on the Veterans Club as part of our community. So Ron, I just want to thank you again. I'm really appreciative, man. It's great seeing Marines just get after it and tackling those problems that a lot of folks shy away from. But you are stepping up, brother. So I salute you, man. Semper Fi.
Semper Fi, gentlemen. I'm so grateful for the platform, and please, any opportunity you have for us to continue to spread this message together, please let's do so. We can all be beneficiaries of this mission.
I also want to extend a gratitude for showing up, Ron, and sharing this awesome message in this process. I messaged you a few things in the back channel, but I'm definitely going to connect. I want to hear a lot more about this, and let's talk a little bit more on the after show about it. Again, thank you for coming out, guys. Give Ron a follow, just like Jeffrey said. Scan the QR code, go to the website, get some more information. Let's connect, and let's make stuff happen. I mean, it's time.
Let's do it. Let's do it, gents. All right, Semper Fi, ladies and gentlemen. You have heard it from Mr. Ron Lasorsa. He is the founder and managing general partner of Victory Litigation Fund, and he's also a Marine, talking with Marines and solving Marine problems, because we're going to solve it. I know we will. Ron, I want to thank you. I want to thank our audience here for tuning in today. Please join us for the after show. It's going to be on LinkedIn audio only. Yes, we have heard your feedback. We are looking to scale to other platforms as well, and that will be coming soon. So if you're going to join us on the LinkedIn audio so you can meet Ron. Veterans Club signing out.